Hi, my name is Andy Mallet, and this is Glimmer DSL for SWT tutorial number 29. So last time I gave a tutorial about Hello Custom Widget. Today I'm going to give a related tutorial called Hello Custom Shell. A shell is basically a window, and a custom shell is just a specialized kind of a custom widget. So let's get started by launching the sample. So as you can see, we have a sort of an email program that's listing a bunch of emails. So I can point at an email with the mouse and click on it, and it opens it up. And it's showing us a date, a from, a to, a subject, and a body. And I can navigate different email messages. And one thing to note is if I hit escape, it closes the window. That's just an extra convenience. And what we're seeing here is basically a custom window. So we have the main window of the application, but also we're launching customized windows within the main window. They're nested windows. And usually with nested windows, for free, you get the escape shortcut as a way of closing the window. So that way a user can navigate by keyboard as well and hit enter and quickly hit escape and go to another message, open it, hit escape, etc. So you can make the application pretty user-friendly through keyboard shortcuts. In any case, let's take a look at the code. I'm going to keep one of those open over here. So basically what we have is let's get started by looking at the app itself first. So the app is a Hello Custom Shell class, and it's including Glimmer UI application by default. So this is something that we've touched on many times before. You cannot really escape it. Whenever you're building an app, you're building a sort of a custom shell or a custom window. Today, the focus of the sample is on custom shells. So we're going to get into that in more details. Basically, when you say include Glimmer UI application, it's the same thing as saying include Glimmer UI custom shell or include Glimmer UI custom window. What you mean by that is you're building a custom widget of sorts that is representing the window of your app. It has unique elements for your app. However, the main body root, meaning when we look at the body, the root of it is always a shell, meaning a window. So, so if we were to start looking at the body and compare it to what we have over here, basically we have a window. It's got a grid layout of sorts. It's got a title, and then it has a couple of labels. So it's got a label here that's saying emails. It's got another one that says click an email message to view it, or click an email to view its message. Either way. And then there's a table. And the table has 3 columns: date, subject, and from. And then we have table items. They're bidirectionally data bound to the emails attribute on email system model. And in that order: date, subject, and from. And then we have the selection of the table as well, data bound to the selected email on email system. So items is going to populate the table with different items, like different rows, and the selection is just going to remember which row is selected. Finally, on mouse up, we open an email. So that happens when I click and then I do up on the mouse button. That opens up an email message. Also on key pressed, if I hit enter, I also open an email message, or if I hit space, I open an email message. And this is happening here in the on key pressed listener, where it says, if the event key code is one of those two carriers, return or space, then we're going to open the email message. And that just delegates to this method. And then this is the interesting part of this sample, or this is where the interesting part lives. Basically what we're doing here is instantiating an email shell. So that's a custom shell, a custom window that will open an email message. And notice how it always has the same layout. You got metadata at the top, and then you have the body at the bottom. So in order to avoid repeating this work multiple times every time for every email message, what you do instead is declare a custom shell widget, which is called email shell, that is reusable, and then you just pass it the metadata and you open it. So the difference between a custom shell and a custom widget is that a custom shell, like I mentioned before, always has a shell or a window at its root, but also it has extra methods that come with shells, like open, for example, or launch. So here what we're doing is basically instantiating one and then opening it, and that ends up opening it in the GUI and showing it to us. So how do we declare a custom shell? So now let's go back to the top, and you can see we have an email shell class. It's mixing in a Glimmer UI custom shell. A custom shell, again, is an alias for custom window or application. However, when you're declaring a widget that you want to reuse multiple times as within the main application, this is then not the application. This is just a custom shell that you're reusing multiple times to spawn different windows within the main application. So usually you want to use this alias when you're just declaring a reusable window. Whereas if you're declaring a top level window that represents an app, then you say Glimmer UI application. That makes it clearer that you're building an application. So what we have here is just like custom widget, you have options. You can declare options that the custom shell will receive. In this case, it's mostly the metadata, like date, subject, from, message, as well as the parent shell, the shell that owns it. And then if you want to declare a default value on an option, you can use the option keyword instead and say, okay, all of the messages by default are going to be directed to John Irwin. And that's just an example. You might have different requirements in real life, but for the purposes of this demo, that's how we built it. And then what we're doing here is basically building a shell, passing it the parent shell in order to make it a nested shell. And once we make it a nested shell, then by default, if I hit escape, it'll close it without closing the app. And it's going to receive the SWT style that is passed to it. If we don't pass anything, then here in the before body block, we're defaulting it to standard shell trim. That's just a basic window in SWT, and it's modeless. Modeless gives us this behavior where you can launch multiple of those and still be able to go to the parent shell and launch more of them and be able to control it. So it's not completely blocked. If we were to get into the GUI, what we have here is basically, a couple of labels for the date. So let's keep this over here. And then a couple of labels for the from, a couple of labels for the to, for the subject. And then finally, we have the body. It's just this label that fills space horizontally and vertically. And it's got a white background and it's got the text in it. So that enables us to, make the email view a reusable window and be able to just reuse the same code multiple times whenever you need to open a new window. So that pretty much covers it. Let's look a little bit into the data side of things. If we were to look at the main application, we have an email model and an email system model. The system has all the emails within it. So it's got emails and selected email, and it also keeps track of the selected email. So in a way, the email system is playing the role of a presenter as well. And then here in the before body, we're just faking a bunch of emails. So we're declaring some emails with some fake data. But in a real email app, obviously we'd have to pull the emails from a POP server or an IMAP server. So one other thing I wanted to note about the use of Glimmer UI custom shell as an application as opposed to a custom shell is when you're building an application, usually it's a singleton. You're going to launch this once. So usually it comes with a class method here that says launch, and that enables you to launch this custom shell as the application. Whereas with this custom shell, we're using the Glimmer DSL, which is the lowercase keyword that matches the class name. So here the class name is email shell. So by convention, that means we can create it using this keyword, email shell underscored case. And this ends up building the custom shell and then giving us an object with an open method. So then we call open, and that ends up popping it up. And obviously you get access to other shell methods, like you can hide it, you can show it, you can close it, etc. So that pretty much covers everything about custom shells. In order to learn more about Hello Custom Shell and the Glimmer DSL for SWT project, check out the GitHub repository.